I got the email just after lights out. We were in Kuwait, mid-July, 109 degrees at midnight, the air thick and stale inside the canvas barracks. I was halfway through a bottle of warm water, trying to cool down before bed, when my screen lit up. The subject line read, "Let's be adults about this." That phrase alone told me everything I needed to know. I clicked anyway. There it was, a cleanly formatted PDF attached to a 3-sentence message from Mark, my husband of 12 years. He'd filed for divorce. He'd already emptied our joint checking account. And he'd moved Chloe, his friend from work, into our house in Olympia. My name, Captain Eliza Harper, U.S., Army Medical Corps, was printed at the top of a document that ended everything. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I closed the laptop gently, placed it on the makeshift plywood shelf beside my cot, and stood up. The barracks were quiet, save for a few murmured voices from the card table near the back. My boots were unlaced, my undershirt damp with sweat. I walked to the communal showers, turned the water on cold, and stood beneath the stream like it might wash away the betrayal clinging to my skin. When I returned, I climbed into my cot, pulled the blanket up to my chest, and stared at the metal ceiling for a long time. Then, finally, I turned the screen back on, opened my inbox, hit reply, and typed one word, noted. No explanation. No questions, no begging, just a quiet, surgical detachment. The kind they teach you in trauma medicine when lives are slipping away and you can't afford to feel. The next morning, I made my bed with hospital corners. I brushed my teeth. I suited up and reported for rounds at the base infirmary. I checked vitals on a young corporal who'd taken shrapnel to the thigh and reassured a private who hadn't slept in 3 nights from desert nightmares. I kept my voice calm, my hand steady, my smile intact. No one noticed anything was wrong. Except for Rivera. She caught me slipping for half a second when I hesitated before updating a chart. "You all right, ma'am?" she asked, frowning. I blinked, then nodded. "Just tired." She didn't press. We've all learned not to push when someone's holding themselves together with string and tape. But the truth was, I wasn't tired. I wasn't even surprised, because deep down I'd known. Maybe not the details, not the timing, but the signs were there long before I boarded that plane. A kind of slow erosion that happens when love turns to tolerance and then to silence. It started small. Mark stopped asking about my deployments, then stopped calling altogether unless I called first. He changed the passwords on our Netflix account, then on his phone. He started working late more often, claimed he'd taken up jogging, though his running shoes stayed in the closet. And when I suggested counseling, he told me I was overthinking everything. Still, I wanted to believe it was just distance, that maybe I was projecting fears onto things that didn't deserve them. So I kept quiet. I buried it, because that's what you do when you're overseas and the mission comes first. You compartmentalize. You survive. You tell yourself, I'll deal with it when I get home. Only now. There was nothing left to deal with. He'd made that decision for both of us. What he didn't know, what he couldn't have known, was that I had made quiet preparations of my own, not out of mistrust, not even out of suspicion, but out of instinct. I'd opened a private bank account 2 months before I deployed, redirected a portion of my pay there, just enough to give me options. I'd stored my will, my grandmother's wedding ring, and the deed to the house, still under my name thanks to the VA loan, in a locked safety deposit box. And I'd set up remote access to our home security cameras. Just in case. I didn't know what I was preparing for then, but now I did. And this time, I wasn't going to patch the wound or pretend it didn't exist. I'd spent 12 years learning how to fix what was broken. But now, it was time to hold someone accountable for the damage. And I was going to do it with the same precision I brought to the field. No panic, no mess, just results. We met in a moment that felt like something out of a movie. I'd just returned from my second deployment, tired, raw, carrying too much death in my chest, and I'd gone to a friend's engagement party just to feel normal for a night. Mark was there, standing by the backyard grill, sleeves rolled up, telling a story I didn't quite catch, but everyone around him was laughing. He had the kind of easy charm that made people lean in. I didn't. I stayed at the edge of the crowd, sipping something too sweet and too warm. He noticed anyway, said, "You look like you want to be anywhere but here." I said, "That obvious?" He smiled, said, "Yeah, but that's why I'm talking to you." We were married 11 months later. It wasn't a fairy tale, but it was honest. He respected what I did, even if he didn't understand it. He'd never known anyone in the military. His father was a high school principal. His mom ran a floral shop. Mark worked in city planning, safe, grounded civil. He said he admired my bravery, said I was the strongest woman he'd ever met. And for a while I believed him. Our first home was a modest 2-bedroom in Olympia. The yard was overgrown, the floorboards creaked, and the water heater needed replacing every other month. But we painted the walls ourselves. We planted herbs in the kitchen window. We hung a map in the hallway and pinned every country I'd served in, every base I'd passed through. Mark used to send me letters, actual paper, with stamps and his messy handwriting when I was deployed. He'd write about mundane things, the cat scratching the new couch, the neighbor's kid learning to ride a bike, a recipe he'd failed spectacularly. I kept them all. But somewhere along the way, the tone changed. The laughter got thinner, the updates shorter, the letters stopped. By year 7, things had cooled. He stopped coming to my return ceremonies, said they were too overwhelming. When I made captain, he congratulated me with a distracted smile, then asked if I'd consider a desk role so I could be home more. When I said no, that I wasn't ready to leave field work, he didn't argue. He just nodded and turned back to his laptop. I tried. I adjusted schedules, took shorter deployments, prioritized date nights, even when my body screamed for sleep. But the distance had settled between us like fog, thick and permanent. I'd catch him staring through me sometimes, like I was a roommate he didn't quite recognize anymore. We stopped touching, stopped talking unless it was bills or grocery lists. I once stood in the kitchen for 10 full minutes, watching him scroll through his phone, waiting for him to ask how my day had been. He never looked up. Then came Chloe. At first, it was just a name, a co-worker, a woman from the office who helped with projects late into the night. He mentioned her in passing, always with a chuckle. "You'd like her," he said once. "She's smart, funny, doesn't take crap from anyone." I didn't say anything, but my stomach turned in a way I couldn't explain. Then came the late nights, the password change on the home Wi-Fi, the second toothbrush in our bathroom, supposedly for guests. I told myself I was imagining things, that maybe I was paranoid after too many months away, too many hours of silence. But deep down I knew. I once asked if he wanted to come with me on a base visit, just a short weekend, families allowed. He laughed, said, "That's your world, Eliza. I don't belong there." Maybe he was right. Maybe he never had. Maybe I'd been trying to build a life with someone who only loved me when I was fragile, not when I was strong. The night before I deployed to Kuwait, I stood at the airport in full uniform, backpack slung over one shoulder. Mark hugged me goodbye like he was embracing a colleague. No emotion, no urgency, just a polite pat on the back and, "Take care of yourself, okay?" I remember looking over his shoulder at the departure board, thinking, this is the last time he'll ever touch me. I was right. 2 weeks after that email, I got another notification. This time from the banking app I'd almost forgotten was still linked to my old account. I was grabbing lunch at the mess hall, half listening to someone complain about sand in their boots, when my phone buzzed. Withdrawal, $92,000. My hand froze around the plastic fork. I clicked into the app. The joint checking account showed a balance of $14.37. The savings account One we'd built together over a decade was gone. Every cent. I stared at the numbers, unblinking. Then I got up, left my tray untouched, and walked out into the blazing sun. That evening, I called the bank from the secure call center. The rep was polite, robotic. Said the withdrawals had been happening gradually, small amounts at first, starting the day I deployed. Then larger transfers funneled to an account I didn't recognize. One of them had Chloe's name attached to it. The rep didn't say anything more, but I could hear the hesitation in her voice. The shame. I ended the call and just stood there in the fluorescent lit hallway, surrounded by the faint echo of chatter and laughter from other soldiers calling their kids, their spouses, their parents. They had homes to return to, people waiting. And me? I had a man who emptied our accounts and moved another woman into my bed. That night, I didn't sleep. I logged into our home security system, a detail Mark had clearly forgotten I could access remotely. It took a few minutes to buffer the footage, but when the screen loaded, I saw it. A red pickup truck parked in our driveway. Chloe stepped out first, her hair tied up in a bun, holding the leash of our dog, Charlie. My dog, the one I rescued from a ditch in Kandahar. Then came Mark in his pajama pants, holding the mug I bought him for our 3rd anniversary, the one that said "World's Okayest Husband." He handed it to her and she laughed. They walked inside together like they belonged there. I watched as she wandered through my kitchen, opening drawers like she'd always known where everything was. She sat on the couch I picked out during a PCS move, legs curled under her, scrolling through her phone while Mark made popcorn in the microwave I bought on sale at Target. During deployment number 3, when he forgot our anniversary and I sent him a care package to remind him. And then he kissed her, right in the center of my living room. My living room with the crooked bookshelf I built, the yellow lamp from my grandmother, the Afghan rug I bargained for in Kabul. Something inside me cracked, but not in the way people expect. It wasn't rage. It wasn't even heartbreak. It was clarity. Cold, sharp, surgical. I closed the feed. I sat on the edge of my cot. I opened a notebook I kept beside my bunk and began to write. 1. Call Dana. 2. Check Virginia loan terms. 3. Access deed documents. 4. Contact JAG friend at Pentagon. 5. Retrieve storage key. 6. Secure pension accounts. I wasn't falling apart. I was drawing a battle plan. Because Mark thought I was thousands of miles away, helpless, blind, and too far gone to fight back. But what he didn't understand was, I don't need to yell to make someone bleed. I just need to be quiet long enough for them to hang themselves. I called Dana the next morning before sunrise. She picked up on the second ring. No hello, no preamble. Just, tell me everything. I did. The email, the money, the footage, the fake domestic bliss unfolding in real time on the other side of the world. When I finished, she was silent for a beat. Then said, "We'll need documentation. Lots of it. And if he touched the house, we go scorched earth." I said he wouldn't be that stupid. She replied, "Oh, honey, he already is." That same day, Dana pulled my home loan records using my VA credentials. 30 minutes later, she called again, her voice a half octave higher. "There's a new mortgage on the house," she said. 3 months old. Someone refinanced it and pulled out over $340,000. My stomach twisted. That's impossible. He can't do that without you're the sole loan holder, which means your signature is required. Exactly. Then he forged it, she said flatly. It's not just theft now, Eliza. It's federal fraud. She emailed me the documents. There it was, my name, scrawled in a shaky imitation. The middle initial was wrong, the slant too steep, but to someone skimming it could pass, especially if they wanted it to. Next came the name Brian Shaw, the real estate broker who processed the refinance. Dana knew the name. He's been investigated before, she said. Deals involving divorcees, quick sales, always just within legal limits. But this, with forged military loan paperwork, he's crossed a line. I leaned over the desk in the comms room, my pulse roaring in my ears. What do I do? You let me build a file, she said, and you don't confront Mark. Not yet. We need him to feel safe, untouchable. That's when people get sloppy. That night, I checked the security footage again. A new car in the driveway. A man in khakis with a clipboard walking through my kitchen like he was conducting a showing. Mark followed him around, pointing out things. Chloe lingered in the background, giggling, barefoot, sipping wine from a glass I recognized from my wedding registry. I turned up the audio. Mark, we were thinking listing at 470. Open to 430 if they come with cash. Man, I've got a buyer in mind. Fast deal. No inspection. Chloe, can we be out before Christmas? Mark, easily. They were planning to sell my house. I sat frozen for a long moment, then clicked into the security settings and downloaded the full clip. Forwarded it to Dana with the subject line, "They're moving fast." Within hours, Dana had sent a complaint to the VA Fraud Division, notified the county clerk about the forged deed documents, and flagged the property in the local database. Any attempt to transfer or sell would now trigger a legal hold. We weren't just documenting anymore, we were boxing them in. That night, Mark texted me for the first time since the email. "Can we talk? Just want to clear the air." I didn't reply. 2 hours later, "There's been some confusion with the bank. We should sort it before lawyers get involved." Still nothing. Then the call. I let it go to voicemail. Lizette. Ooh. "I don't know what you're hearing, but Chloe and I are trying to do what's best for everyone. We're not trying to hurt you. Please don't make this harder than it has to be." I stared at the screen for a long time, then deleted the message. He wasn't trying to hurt me. He just didn't care if I was hurt. There's a difference, and that difference, it's what turns heartbreak into resolve. 2 weeks later, I stepped off a red-eye flight at SeaTac under a fake last name and a hood pulled low. I didn't tell a soul I was home. Not my commanding officer, not my neighbors, not even Dana. I went straight to a cheap motel 15 minutes outside of Olympia, checked into room 214, and sat on the edge of the bed for a long time, just listening to the silence. I hadn't been in Washington in over 6 months, but the air still smelled like wet pine and distant salt, the kind of smell that used to make me feel grounded. Now it just made my skin crawl. I wasn't home. I was behind enemy lines. The next morning, Dana and I met at a rundown diner off the freeway, where the coffee came in chipped mugs and the waitress didn't ask questions. She slid a folder across the table, thick with copies, signatures, timestamps. "This is everything," she said. "Loan records, forged signatures, emails between Mark and Brian. And this," she pulled out a document with a yellow tab. "It's a tentative sale agreement. They were going to list next week. Buyers already lined up. A cash deal, no contingencies." I scanned the names. Brian Shaw, listing agent. Chloe Spencer, co-signer. "Wait," I said. "Spencer?" Dana nodded. "Chloe's full name. Turns out she's listed as a business partner with Brian in 2 previous sales, both involving recently divorced military spouses. So it's not just Mark. It's a pattern. A very profitable one. We didn't confront them. We didn't warn them. We watched. That afternoon, I parked down the street from my own house. A rental SUV with tinted windows. Dana beside me, laptop open, security camera feed on screen. I sipped lukewarm gas station coffee, while the people who betrayed me wandered through what used to be my life. At 9:17 a.m., Chloe left the house wearing yoga pants and sunglasses, heading toward Riverfront Park. She thought I was going to meet her there. A decoy text Dana had sent from a burner phone. At 9:26, a gray Lexus pulled into the driveway. The logo on the door read Shaw Realty. Brian stepped out, briefcase in hand. Mark greeted him in my sweatshirt. They shook hands. Interior's ready? Brian asked. Yep, Mark said. Cleaned it up yesterday. They entered the house. The front door closed. The cameras, internal and external, recorded everything. Dana clicked into the feed and turned up the volume. Brian, will list at 470. Buyer offers 420. We close in 10 days. Everyone walks happy. Mark. And no trouble from the wife. Brian laughed. They never push when they're in uniform. Deployments keep them too busy to fight back. Mark shrugged. She won't even know until the ink's dry. Chloe's voice, faint in the background. Let's just make sure this one's clean. I don't want heat. Brian, relax. You're practically a pro at this point. Dana hit record. Then she picked up her phone and called Agent Marissa Patel, lead investigator at the FBI's Financial Crimes Unit, who'd been quietly watching the case for 2 weeks. Now, Dana said. 17 minutes later, a line of unmarked black SUVs rolled down the street. I watched from the rearview mirror as agents in windbreakers moved in formation, like a dance we both knew well. I didn't blink when they knocked on my door, and entered without waiting. 3 minutes later, Brian Shaw emerged in cuffs. Chloe followed, looking pale, barefoot, phone still in hand. Mark came out last, hands behind his back. No shoes, no swagger, just a man whose world had cracked open and was still falling. My phone buzzed. Patel, we got them on wire fraud, mortgage fraud, conspiracy. It's airtight. I typed back one word, good. Then I leaned back against the car seat, closed my eyes, and exhaled for what felt like the first time in months. By the time I arrived at the field office later that afternoon, the agents had already processed the first round of interviews. Brian had lawyered up immediately. Chloe cried. Mark said nothing. Agent Patel and her partner, Agent Donovan, met me in a quiet conference room lined with government-issued chairs and too many ceiling tiles. They were professional, thorough, and above all, calm. Your case ties directly into a larger pattern we've been building for months, Patel said. Shaw and Spencer, Chloe, have done this before. At least 4 times that we can prove. All women, all military, all overseas when it happened. I felt sick, not just for myself, but for them, for the other women who got no warning. No security cameras, no Dana. Mark hadn't just broken my heart. He'd joined a pipeline built on targeting women like me, women trained to fight enemies in uniform, but not betrayal in their own beds. Where does he stand? I asked quietly. Donovan glanced at the folder in front of him. He may try to claim ignorance. Say he was manipulated by Chloe and Shaw. But the financial trail is tight. His name's on the forged signatures, the bank transactions, the emails. And the footage seals the deal. He bragged about the deal being clean. He dismissed your authority like it was a joke. I swallowed. So what happens to them now? Patel leaned forward. We're recommending federal charges. Wire fraud, conspiracy to commit mortgage fraud, identity theft, and attempted sale of property under false pretenses. Shaw will go away for a long time. Chloe's looking at years. And Mark. That's where we need your help. I stiffened. What do you mean? We can charge him with the full list, she said. But the court will look to you, the victim, when determining how far to go. If you want to press for maximum prosecution, we will back you. If you prefer to settle civilly, keep it quiet, protect your name. That's an option too. I stared at the manila folder in front of me. His handwriting. My forged signature. The sale agreement he tried to sneak past while I was patching up bullet wounds on the other side of the world. Can I get my house back? Yes, Patel said. We've frozen all assets related to the fraudulent refinance. The title will revert fully to you. And the money? Donovan nodded. We've traced most of it. What wasn't spent will be returned as restitution. including your original joint funds. I gave a dry laugh. So I get to keep what was mine in the first place. Patel offered a faint smile. That's how justice works. Slowly, but surely. I took a deep breath. Then I want this. All of it. Restitution. Full rights to the house. Pension untouched. And I want him to sign a full confession, admitting what he did. That's my condition for not pressing federal charges. Patel nodded. We'll make it happen. 2 weeks later, Mark sat across from me in a mediation room. He looked older, smaller, like someone had drained the ego from his bones. He couldn't meet my eyes, couldn't say my name, just sign the papers and push them back like a man brushing dirt off his hands. I didn't gloat. I didn't smile, because it wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about release. I left the building with the final decree in my bag, the keys to my home restored, and a signed confession that would prevent Mark from ever touching my pension, my equity, or my peace of mind again. That night, I sat on the back porch of a temporary rental and stared at the stars over Olympia, trying to feel something. Relief, maybe, but all I felt was stillness, not emptiness, just space, room to begin again. A year later, I sold the house. Not because I needed the money, though the market was hot and the profit was generous, but because I couldn't stand the walls anymore. Every floorboard held an echo. Every door held a memory. Chloe laughing in my kitchen. Mark sipping coffee from my mug. The silence of betrayal lingering like the smell of smoke long after the fire is out. I bought a small cabin 3 hours outside of Missoula, Montana. 2 bedrooms, tin roof, wood stove that creaked in the winter, 10 acres of forest where the pine needles fell like rain, and a narrow creek ran behind the porch steps. No neighbors for miles, just me, a German shepherd named Scout, and the sound of wind through trees. I didn't hang pictures on the walls. Not yet. I wasn't ready for faces, but I built furniture with my own hands. Rough, imperfect, sturdy. A table from salvaged timber. Bookshelves from old pallets. A bench for the porch, where I'd sit with a mug of tea and watch the world grow quiet. My pension covered the basics. I did carpentry work for locals, nothing flashy. Repaired barns. Built fences. Fixed cabinets, too warped for modern hands. They called me the lady vet with sharp eyes and steady hands. I didn't mind the label. It was better than what Mark used to call me. Too much. Sometimes, when the nights got too long and the memories too sharp, I'd wake up and go stand barefoot in the grass, breathing in the cold. The sky out here was bigger than anything I'd ever seen in Afghanistan or Iraq. Bigger than the things I'd lost. Bigger than the grief I hadn't spoken aloud. And then one morning I got a letter. It was handwritten, on lined paper, the ink slightly smudged. The return address said Fort Worth, Texas. You don't know me, but I owe you more than I can say. My husband is in the Navy. Last year, while he was deployed, someone tried to refinance our house. It almost worked. But the FBI stepped in, said they cracked the case because of you. Said your evidence gave them what they needed to stop it. We kept our home because you fought when you didn't have to. Thank you. You reminded me that even when the world goes dark. Some women light torches. I read it twice. Then I pinned it to my refrigerator with a magnet shaped like Montana. That letter stayed there. Through every season. Through every storm. Through every quiet evening when I wondered if what I'd done had mattered beyond my own healing. Because it had. Mark was sentenced to probation and restitution. Chloe and Brian both served time, 4 and 12 years respectively. I never heard from them again. Never needed to. They became background noise in a life I no longer shared with them. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't haunted. I was just free. Some days I still thought about the woman I used to be. The one who stood on airstrips at dawn. The one who stitched wounds in tents while rockets fell outside. The one who waited, year after year, for love that no longer lived in the home she built. She wasn't weak. She wasn't naive. She was strong enough to love, and stronger still to let go. And me? I'm not trying to rebuild what I lost anymore. I'm building something new. Not because I have to, but because it's mine, and no one can take it from me again.